Hello and welcome back to the OSM channel. So it's just about the time of year in which I need to start mulching the garden beds. Typically I haul in around 23 yards of mulch every year. Normally 20 of those yards are comprised of just regular undyed hardwood mulch. It's cheap, it's effective. And the other 3 yards, I typically haul in 3 yards of cedar mulch, and I use the cedar mulch around the beds that make contact with the foundation of the house. The great thing about cedar mulch is it produces this natural aroma which repels insects, bugs, ants, spiders, carpenter ants, things of that nature. So it's a great natural way to help keep bugs away from the foundation of the house. But anyway, in today's video, I want to service this dump trailer, this Griffin GT-712 dump trailer. So what we need to do, we got to grease the axles, we'll check the tire pressure, we'll check the torque on the lugs, but the main thing I really want to hit today, I don't know if you can see, but if you take a look at that fender well right there, there's some rust dripping down on the trailer frame rails. So this trailer is powder coated, and I don't really like powder coat. The problem with powder coat is once rust gets underneath it, it just spreads and spreads and peels, and I feel like a traditional Rust-Oleum, like oil-based paint, doesn't chip away. Everybody says powder coat, oh, it's durable, it's long-lasting, but personally I much prefer an oil-based paint. So without further ado, let's get to servicing this dump trailer. So I'm too cheap to buy 2 batteries, one for the dump trailer and one for the logging jib crane trailer. So I'll take the battery out of the jib crane trailer, we'll throw it in the dump trailer, and then we'll lift up the bed. Alright, let's see if I can remember where these wires go. So I just checked the hydraulic reservoir inside the hydraulic box. We're good on fluid, so let's lift up the dump bed. Yeah, so taking a look at the frame of the trailer right now, this rust is actually pretty severe as to where the powder coat is chipping away. I'll show you that here momentarily, but before we go in between the dump body and the frame of the trailer, let's install this safety prop. So we're going to lower the dump bed back down so it's lightly resting on this body prop. And I like to have just a little bit of pressure on this. I want most of the pressure being held by the hydraulics, but should the hydraulics fail, that prop is going to save our life. So here's what I really hate about powder coat. Once the rust gets underneath the powder coat, it just spreads and spreads and spreads, and then this powder coat just peels away like an old Band-Aid. And looking at this steel right now, there's actually a bit of pitting on this. I'm actually pretty disappointed in this. This is, I mean, it may not look good on camera, but this is pretty bad rust damage for only being 2 years old and having really pretty light use. I mean, I only do about, like I said, 23 yards of mulch every year, so, you know, this isn't a daily use trailer. This is used probably 6 or 7 times a year, something like that. So this is really bad. Now take a look at the top rail. I mean, look at this. That is just, look at that. That is just unacceptable. And I can actually feel some metal peeling off there. Let's take a look at this. Wow. So if you take a look on your left, you could see the powder coat, but then it looks like the rust got into the metal, and the metal kind of stuck to the powder coat, and this is just a mess. Yeah, we got to do something about this today. Oh, goodness. Goodness gracious. Look at that. That's all iron. Not good. So let's go ahead, let's get a wire wheel, let's start grinding some of this stuff off, and then we'll give this a coat of Rust-Oleum. Alright, so I'm all set up here. I have my 4.5-inch angle grinder with one of these wire wheels on here. This is what I'm going to use to get all that old powder coat and rust off. Safety glasses, respirator, hearing protection, gloves, face guard, jacket, the whole 9. So when you're doing a job like this, you want your PPE on. So let's take a look at this frame rail here. Look at that pitting. This trailer's only 2 years old. This trailer's never run in the wintertime. This is terrible. This is why I hate powder coat. The problem with powder coat, once that rust, that water gets underneath that powder coat, it's unable to escape and it just keeps spreading and oxidizing further and further. I just feel like it doesn't happen as severely with an oil-based paint. Alright, enough yabbering on, let's go ahead and paint this frame. So I like this stuff a lot, Rust-Oleum Semi-Gloss Black. I use this to touch up the truck's frame. We're going to use it on the trailer frame today. But here's a little tip. When you're using a paintbrush with this stuff, if you want to save the paintbrush, take a glass bottle, fill it up with paint thinner, cut a square hole in the top of the lid for the paintbrush, insert a metal wire through the handle of the paintbrush, so that way when you're done painting you can put the paintbrush in this thinner, so that way it won't ruin the paintbrush. You can go ahead and reuse it next time, and also by having this lid attached to the handle of the paintbrush, it helps to prevent paint from dripping back down on your hand. It kind of acts like a splatter shield, if you will. So let's get painting. Now, of course, if I was painting the walls inside the house, I'd be using a nicer quality paintbrush, but for something like this, I definitely don't mind using a paintbrush where the bristles are not in the best shape. But hey, if we're saving money on not having to buy a new paintbrush, and we can save the frame of the trailer, I'm all for it. So give this a nice thick coat. Let this dry overnight. I figured out that it's much easier to work under this thing when it's raised up all the way, so I'm using that crusty old 2x10 as my body prop. It's a lot better than what it was. I also gave the axles a quick coat. Not the prettiest thing, but it should help to slow down the rust. So the hydraulic cylinders on this trailer are dual action, meaning that they are power up and power down. So each line comes from either side. They meet at this Y and then they go back to the hydraulic control box. And as you can see, we have a bit of oil residue here, so I think I've tightened these fittings before, but let's go ahead and make sure that all these are tight. We might have a bad crimp from one of these hydraulic lines. That's always possible too. I got a little bit on that guy. So a few issues I have with the hydraulics. For one, this hydraulic line is making contact with the frame right there. That's a poor design. Very poor design. Another issue I have is where these hydraulic lines go to the lower port on the cylinder. You're not supposed to have bends in hydraulic lines like that. You could have a gradual 45, but if you want to reroute something 180 degrees, you have to use hard fittings, and this is just unacceptable. So this is definitely a potential fail point, and this is an absolute fail point. We have that same 180 degree loop on the other side too, and I get it. You don't want it to get pinched down in the hinge point, but I've taken a lot of hydraulic safety classes, and this is absolutely unacceptable. So I'm unable to get in here with my, it's probably a 10 mil to remove this clamp, so I'm just going to cut this sucker off because I need to ensure that these lines are good and tight, and I can't do that with this on here. And additionally, I'd like to try and get some of the pressure off this hose where it's hitting the frame here. Alright, that was a little loose. That guy's tight. Yeah, that guy was pretty loose. Alright, so those lines are tighter now. Get my trusty dusty hammer. Now I'm just going to take this split wire loom and put it in between these hydraulic lines and the sharp edge of the bed here to give this hydraulic line some chafing protection. So we're just trying to improve the situation here. It may not look like much, but this little bit of preventative maintenance could very well save us a day of frustration running around town trying to find a new hydraulic line when this blows. So it definitely pays to take care of your equipment, people. Alright, now while the trailer's still propped up, let's go ahead and grease everything. So we need to grease the Easy Lube axles. There's going to be 2 grease zerks on each cylinder. There's a few in the rear, and then there's also one for this trailer jack right here. So about 2 years ago, I had this company, Saker, send me out this grease zerk lock for my grease gun, and I love it about 85% of the time. What you do, pull back on the trigger, and it just goes over the grease zerk, locks in the grease zerk, and it allows you to operate the grease gun with 2 hands, which is so handy. here's the issue. It's pretty long. It's about 4 or 5 inches long, so when you have a grease zerk on like a hydraulic cylinder that you're trying to sneak your gun into and lock it onto that fitting, this is not going to work. So I only have one grease gun, and it makes it very difficult to get those hard to reach zerks. So now we need to lubricate these Easy Lube axles. So just take a flathead screwdriver, pop out this rubber cap. You can see we have a grease zerk right in the axle there. And I grease this thing religiously. Let's see if our Saker grease zerk lock will fit in here. I believe it does. Locked on. About 6, 7, 8 squirts. It's not like I'm going across the country, and I do grease this probably 3 or 4 times a year, and I only put probably 1,000 miles on the trailer, so these bearings are going to be just fine. Now, a feature that I really like about this trailer is it has 3 hinges for the dump bed. When I was in the market for dump trailers, that's one thing that really attracted me to this trailer, because most other dump trailers out there, they only have 2 hinges. So this is great because it spreads the weight and load between these 3 hinge points. It's less stress on the steel. And I just think it's better overall, better design. So I like to grease these until a little bit of grease comes out the side. I know you can't see that on camera, but it's my technique. Final 2 things I want to do today on this trailer. I want to check the torque on the lug nuts. I think I torqued them down to 140 foot-pounds last time. I'm going to bump that up to 150 foot-pounds today. And additionally, I just need to check all the tire pressures. Max inflation pressure is 80. So I typically like to set my tires at 66. This one's right on the money. Another spot on this trailer where it's definitely going to want to rot out is in between the side of the bed and this wheel well here. See, there's kind of like a gap in there for all this stuff to collect, and you have a sloppy operator. Some spills over, lands on this fender well here. It collects right in that gap right there. And I do my very best to keep this as clean as possible. I don't know if you can really see it, but you can see some of the debris popping through that crack right there. So it is what it is. Thought about adding some silicone. I probably should have done that when it was new. Now it's kind of in there. I feel like it's best just to let it air out. Not 100% sure, but anyway, that concludes today's video on trailer maintenance. Closing thoughts are a little bit of preventative maintenance can go a very long way. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will catch you on the next one, and next time you see this trailer, we'll probably be hauling some mulch onto the property. Stay tuned.